All right. We're all here. Well, no, we're waiting for Mr. Small. Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started? I've got 12 o'clock. Mr. Coley, would you note that all are here except Commissioner Small, and I'm sure he will be, unless, the next order of business is approval of minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of October 21.
So moved.
Moved. Second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. All right. Official action, Resolution 1447, resolution authorizing the purchase, sale, transportation, storage of natural gas and repealing Resolution 1387. Mr. Bowles?
Yes, thank you, Commissioners. Commissioners, I'd like to introduce Shay Ottinger, our Manager of Rates, who will provide you the annual update on the winter outlook and forecast for this winter, followed by a presentation and a proposal about our natural gas contracting authority policy. So, Sherry?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Every fall, we do come to you as required by Resolutions 1387, which is on natural gas purchasing authority, and Resolution 1388, which is price risk management. Both of those resolutions have a provision in them where we need to update you annually on these topics. So we also typically will take this opportunity to provide you with winter bill projections. Today, because that we do have a proposed amendment to Resolution 1387, I would like to just go ahead and start with the winter bill projections. Certainly, we have seen natural gas be in the news quite a bit lately. Even if you are not someone who is following the NYMEX commodity futures market, if you drive a gasoline-powered vehicle, then certainly that is a different fuel type, but we've all seen the prices going up at the pump. And so energy prices of all types are up. And again, natural gas has certainly been in the headlines nationally, going back even to last summer. Locally here, we've had some inquiries from media. We've also had a few inquiries from customers recently, but you may have seen some of the local articles about heating bills here in Knoxville. So some of the information on this next chart may be familiar to you because of that. These are our winter bill projections for the upcoming winter. So again, when you look at the natural gas chart, those numbers may look a little high to you, but just remember this is for winter only, November through April. So certainly in the summer, those amounts would be much lower. But for natural gas, last winter, the average customer saw a bill of $87, and we are projecting a 19% increase this year. So that is all driven by the commodity price. You may recall last year at this time I talked to you a little bit about East Tennessee Natural Gas, one of our pipeline providers, that they had had a very significant rate increase, which we were opposing. That rate case has been settled at FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Because of that, that chart on the left, that $104, had that not been resolved favorably, that would have actually been $2 higher. So I just wanted to be sure and update you on that since we had talked about it last year, and to let you know we will be paying East Tennessee less this winter than we did last winter, and that is already reflected in the amount that you see there.
What was the amount negotiated?
Yes, they had filed for an 86% increase, and where it landed at the end was 30%. So and I will say that was the first increase that they had had in maybe 10 to 15 years. It had been a very long time, but obviously 86% was very startling to us and to our customers. So we are glad that we were able to get that reduced. Looking at the electric bill, not quite as startling, a little over $6 or 5%. So certainly, again, similar to natural gas, all of that is commodity driven. In that case, TVA is our only supplier, and certainly their generation is affected by natural gas prices in that market, but they have many other sources for generating power, so you don't see as dramatic of an increase on the electric bill.
Sherry, are those amounts based upon, if you heat by like an electric heat pump versus gas heat, or just across the board?
Those are across the board, and certainly your fuel source would make a big difference in your actual result, as would, many other factors, the size of your home and your insulation, those sorts of things, how you set your thermostat. But definitely, yes, if someone was heating, say if they have a wood stove, their numbers would look very different. So and that leads me actually into my next chart, because one of the things that definitely affect bills, as we've talked about before, is winter weather. So I did want to show this chart because every 10 years, what is considered normal gets reset. Normal is based on a 30-year average, and so NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, they put out that calculation. They released those numbers this summer. So based on their latest numbers, when we look back across the past decade, what we see is that 3 of the previous winters were colder than normal, and 6 were warmer than normal, some significantly warmer. So that will definitely affect the way that winter bills actually turn out. Okay, and if no questions on this, I'll move into the compliance portion of the update. So I always like to just start out by saying we are absolutely in compliance with Resolution 1388. We are also in compliance with Resolution 1387, and I'll just go through some of the highlights of those resolutions. So with 1388, again, this is on price risk management. Currently, we are targeting to have 25% of our natural gas purchases hedged or price locked as we head into the given month. So that is what I call a soft target, because certainly when we look forward to any given month, we expect to purchase a certain volume. As we actually get into that month and go through it, the weather will drive that. If it's much warmer, we won't purchase as much. If it's colder, we'll purchase more, so that denominator is constantly changing. So that is a soft target. Price locks are certainly a great tool for us to mitigate the peaks and valleys of price volatility. Storage is another impact, and we have storage for operational reasons, but it does also help us with our price risk management. So if we look at our price certainty coming from those hedges or price locks and storage, you see that we have about 50% market exposure heading into the winter. And again, some of the things that we do when we have a price lock, that resolution does provide us with guidelines for how we have to enter into those locks, that we have to have a second person witnessing. We do get audited on that as well, so we are in compliance with all aspects of that price risk resolution.
Are you saying locks or locks?
Yes, L-O-C-K, lock. So we lock in on a price. And we'll use the term hedge or price lock interchangeably. So I did want to give you just a quick snapshot of what prices look like. You can see there the market price is the blue line, and the red line is KUB hedges. And so we're constantly, evaluating and looking at that. We have always said, our goal is not to beat the market. Our goal is to smooth out those peaks and valleys. And so when you look at this chart, you will see that there are times where our hedges were higher than the market. There are also times when it was lower. Right now, because of the recent price run-up, you do see that going above $6. That may or may not come to pass. Those NYMEX prices change daily, so this was a point in time. We also utilize kind of a dollar cost averaging approach. So we don't go in and just lock all of our winter gas at one time. Every month we're doing a little bit and a little bit. So that also helps to smooth out the impacts. Okay, for Resolution 1387, this does govern our natural gas contracting authority. And within this resolution, the board has retained certain limits for your consideration, but then you've also delegated certain contractual obligations to KUB staff. So a good example of this, we've come to you previously about prepay gas. If you will recall, that was a 30-year contract. KUB staff could not enter into that contract. We had to come to the board and ask specific permission because it was over 6 years. On the other hand, today, our two-person gas supply team is probably buying gas for this weekend. And that's a transaction that's short-term, and so we're able to do that and be, operationally responsive to the needs. We'll talk a little bit more about some of these limits in the upcoming charts, but I also do want to point out that the board has given us, as staff, the ability to sell excess capacity. And so that means all of the capacity we have on the pipes is typically year-round. We're paying for it the same in the winter as we are in the summer. And so if we have the ability to release that capacity to another shipper, we do that, and they pay us for that. So during fiscal year 21, we were able to do that for over $300,000. That wasn't a single transaction. That is many, many transactions. It may be $10,000 for 3 days or $25,000 for a month, depending on the volume. But we do look for those opportunities to recover that cost, because every dollar that we release and get that back, that dollar goes back to the customers. It's a one-to-one relationship. So we're always glad to find those opportunities and return that money to our customers.
Is the 300,000 plus, is that net, or is that the cost of?
That is just the net of the capacity. When we release, it is, I guess, rarely for max, what we would call max rate. So it's really just what the market will command at that time. So again, we're just very glad. We're going to pay the pipeline based on our contract. So anything we can do to mitigate that, we're glad that we're able to do that. And just to give you a quick look, we'll go through our supply, storage, and then transportation portfolio. So for our supply portfolio, the first 4 suppliers listed there are the ones that we typically are doing business with every month. The volume will vary between winter and summer, but we're consistently doing business with those 4. The next 2, the names may not be as familiar to you, CNX and Sequent. Those suppliers are located on the East Tennessee pipeline in Virginia. They have storage fields there. This year, we do have a year-round contract with each of those. In the past, sometimes it might be a winter-only type contract, but they are strategically located for us near our storage fields. And then the last one that you see that I've listed by name is Morgan Stanley, and again, that is the prepay. That's the only new contract that we entered into this year, and you do see, the expiration term out there is 2051, which is very, very unusual for us. Most of our contracts are typically a 3-year basis. Okay, looking at storage. The chart on the left, you see the very first thing listed is Bear Creek Storage. That dominates our supply portfolio at 3.3 BCF. It's approximately 75% of our entire storage space. But the other ones that are listed there, although they're smaller, again, they're very strategic. They do fill a need for us in our portfolio, being most of them on the East Tennessee pipeline. Also, I'll point out the LNG, which is the green bar on the chart to the right. It is 100% full, and that's a little bit different. The reason for that is LNG we can only inject in the summer, and we can only withdraw in the winter. So every winter we will enter 100% full. On the other storages, for operational flexibility, we leave a little bit of space there. If we have a warm day in November, we want to have somewhere to put the gas that we're already taking and scheduling. Okay, and then that brings us to our transportation contracts. And today I'm just going to concentrate on East Tennessee, which is the blue lines, the bright blue lines on this chart. You can see, if you look over kind of near the Nashville area, the number 83,000. So we have 83,000 of capacity coming from the west. That is our main route to bring gas in to KUB. But we also, of course, up on the what we call the east line going into Virginia, and we have quite a bit there. And again, there you see our storage fields. Saltville and LNG are located there. And we have just a little bit coming up on the south line. When we total all of those, it's 157,381. So we're approaching that 160,000 cap that you saw on our limits. Why we're bringing this to you today. East Tennessee, as I mentioned before, it is a fully subscribed pipe. There is no capacity available. It's also fully utilized. There's not opportunity for us to go find somebody to release capacity to us, especially in the winter on a peak day. So the fact that it is fully subscribed means you can't just go get more capacity from East Tennessee. So what happened this summer was a shipper, not a local distribution company like us, but an industrial customer, they turned back some of their capacity. It was 3,000 decatherms. We don't know when another shipper is going to do that. We don't really get an advance notice. And when this happened, the pipeline put that out on a bulletin board. We can't even see who's releasing it. We can see the volume and we can see the path. Some paths, like on the South Line, if it ended at Chattanooga, we wouldn't be interested in that. But when we do see one that would be strategic for KUB, we want to take that opportunity. Unfortunately, because of the short notice that we're given, this posted and we had 13 days to bid. In 13 days, we cannot come to the board like we did with the prepay and ask you to approve a resolution. We did bid on it for due diligence. We bid 2,619, less than the full volume, and we bid 6 years, and we lost the bid, which we fully expected. But for due diligence, we had to put it in, just in case someone else overlooked it. The winning bid was for the full 3,000 decatherms, and it was for a much longer term. We also can't see, we know who the winning bidder is, but we don't know any others. But through conversations with peers, we do know that others bid the full 3,000. They bid a longer term than we did. So we did not have a viable opportunity to get that. We don't know when another,
I'm sorry, what does longer term mean?
longer than 6 years.
So
We are only allowed to ask for 6 years, or,
We as staff can only do 6 years. In
Right.
fact, it's
Right.
Gabe in particular, can
Yeah.
only do 6 years without coming to you with a resolution.
so that's why we created you created a proposal that was less than, or at 6 years, because that's what you're allowed to do currently?
Yes.
Got it.
Yes. So we operated with, in the parameters that we had. And that's why we're here today, because when we saw that, we're like, wow, if we had, we can't respond. We're just locked in. And so it's also important because although, the rate that we're paying the pipeline just went up 30%, it's $8.35 per decatherm is the rate that we pay. A couple of years ago, East Tennessee put forth a proposal to increase capacity on the pipeline and on a particular route. That proposal was not even for like new construction digging up the earth. It was for compressor upgrades. The price they came back to us with was north of $30. So if we have an opportunity to get a little bit more $8 price on the existing capacity, we want to have a shot at that, basically.
So this limitation we currently have on purchase is affecting
The final consumer, because we aren't able to store at a better rate.
Correct.
Okay.
So right now, the 157,000 we have is serving us, but we are adding natural gas customers every year. Even, a decade ago, we had a particular large customer come to us, and they wanted to stop using coal. And natural gas was how they were able to stop using coal. So when those types of things come along, we do want to be positioned to meet our customers' needs. And so that's why we're here today. So the particular amendment that we're asking for, we are limiting it strictly to East Tennessee. On TETCO or TGP or on our storage fields, we don't need any more capacity. We have room there. But really, because East Tennessee is fully subscribed, there is no other opportunity for us to get existing capacity from them except for when another shipper turns back. And when they turn back, we're probably going to be given a 2-week notice. So that's why we're here. Again, it would apply only to East Tennessee existing capacity opportunities. And when those arise, what we are proposing is we would notify the Audit and Finance Committee before that we bid, and so that we could receive any feedback that way, but without having to try to wait for a monthly board meeting. In this case, it was summer, there wasn't even a July meeting, so, that's the constraint that we're trying to rectify here. So do you have any additional questions? Yes.
So when you say few, how often? I mean, I know few is probably the best you can do, but I mean.
It is, because
give me
I
an
can't.
example.
Yeah, we can't predict what another shipper is going to do, like this industrial customer. They just made their decision, to turn back this capacity. We don't even know the reason why. I suspect it's because that they have access to multiple pipes, which we don't. And so they have just decided that with their other opportunities, they could give this up.
Okay.
But our position is we don't have any other pipe to choose from. This is the only one that runs past Knoxville.
But we, over the last 3 years,
I don't
it's
ask
happened
that.
3 times? 5 times? Once?
Once.
Once in 3
Once.
years, okay. Just-
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
a scale.
It's rare.
You
Yeah,
can't pick
yeah,
it.
right.
It,
Okay.
it is rare.
Okay.
I know we've received some emails from customers urging us to vote no on this resolution, and I think that the emails really don't understand what the proposal is that we're voting on today. I think we as a board made a commitment to utilize some alternative solar. We're in the process of doing that kind of thing. So by voting yes for this, we're not turning our back on alternate energy sources. We're just basically saying that we need to empower the staff to have the flexibility they need to negotiate on a pretty short-term basis to be able to take advantage of these opportunities when they arise. I read those emails and I thought, I don't think they're really looking at what it is the proposal today. I mean, it's not that we're drastically expanding our gas footprint. It's that we're empowering the staff to act economically if the opportunity presents itself. And it may not ever present itself, but you never know. And, you would like to be able to take advantage, as you said, Sherry, of that opportunity if it arises without the constraint of having to come back to us in the rare circumstance that it takes place in a month that we don't have a meeting or something of that nature. Would that be right, Mark?
Yes, that is a correct interpretation of it. It's just to give the flexibility in the event that those situations occur, that we can act fast and doing it in the best interest of our customers, and really in this case, our gas system customers.
Other comments or questions?
I wrote a note in just listening to you that I guess my interpretation and the way that I see it is allows for a more efficient way of operating, so that to do the things that you just mentioned. So I guess efficiency in allowing the staff to do what they need to do.
Yes.
I just wanted to echo what Commissioner Herbert said. When I got the email, I went back and looked at the actions that we'd taken when we approved the large solar project that we've got online. And by the end of 2024, we're going to be at 20% of our power produced coming from solar. So I don't think the folks I hope they weren't aware of that, because, that puts us really at the forefront of any other public utility. And while we don't know what's happened over the last couple of years, at the point in time that we approved it, you looked at the number of megawatts that we were going to have. We were above folks like Apple and Google and Amazon. And so I do feel like we're doing the right thing here, and I feel like it's also our responsibility as a board to make sure that we've got the appropriate energy sources at the best price we can get them for to serve our customers. So I'm definitely in support of the resolution.
Other comments?
My question, Sherry, is obviously we've got growth that we need to manage with new customers coming online and new developments and all that. How tight is our supply to manage, given the projections of what our growth rate is? Are we going to get squeezed here in a few years? And obviously we went after this piece. We didn't get that supply. How tight are we?
I am not concerned for the next few years.
I'm concerned potentially for 20 years from now. And as you know, we think long-term. And so I mentioned to you, the project that East Tennessee proposed, and it was going to be over $30. The project didn't happen. So there's no new capacity, being added on that east line. And that's what we run into is they may think up a project like that, but it doesn't actually come to fruition. So these turnbacks of existing capacity might be the only opportunity that we have in the next 10, 20 years. So.
And in the next 20 years, we hope that some of the alternatives will become more realistic and cost-effective. And so a lot can happen. A lot can happen, and I really do hope. I mean, the frustration for me personally is I wish I had a time machine and we could just race forward 50 years, because I think there will be alternatives to some of the energy sources that do damage to the environment. We're just not there yet, and we're going to be using some of those for a long time. But we need to be continuing our efforts to use alternatives whenever they become cost-effective and obtainable. So I'll entertain a motion on Resolution 1447. Commissioner Small moves.
Second.
Seconded variously. Let's give it to Commissioner Simpson Brown. And I know that we've got one person signed up to speak to the motion, Mr. Watson. Mr. Watson, you know the drill, but I'll tell you anyway. Please state your name and address, and you've got 5 minutes.
All right, appreciate it. Yeah. Y'all may be sick of seeing me by now, but it's good to see y'all. Today I'm actually going to read a comment from a friend of mine who couldn't be here today, but is concerned about this particular resolution. Ooh, it just got really loud. This comment comes from Isabella Kilius, who is actually an undergraduate student and young person learning all about climate change, our energy system, and how decision makers can ensure a safe future for her generation. I've realized the critical roles that utilities play in these processes. She's actually in class right now at UT learning all about how utilities work, so she couldn't be here for the board meeting today. But she says utilities have the power to transform energy and how it works in America, and KUB is no exception. These decisions lie in your hands. That being said, I beg you that you do not make the decision to expand natural gas capacity. Extensive studies show that natural gas is just, if not more, environmentally destructive than coal with the amount of toxic methane it releases, and natural gas infrastructure like pipelines destroy communities across the country, especially poor and native peoples. I, as well as fellow young people, am so fearful that we'll have to clean up the mess of fossil fuels in the next few decades, and when I hear the term cost-effective, I think of the lives lost, forests burned down, and blazing summers as the cost of climate change worsen. So I hope that you, as leaders and board members in Knoxville, will take the bold, ethical, and admirable step to choose clean, renewable energy over fossil gas, because I'm well aware that my future depends on decisions like these. And I just wanted to clarify some of the comments that were raised, and I guess start with, I think the first slide that y'all showed, which was a price risk. As y'all know, these markets for natural gas, or as we call it, fossil gas, are extremely volatile. And by, putting yourself in that market, you are much more at risk of price increases, which will tend to go up. I think it's also especially concerning given that it sounds like there's actually only one main pipeline that you all rely on. And as we've seen once in the last 3 years you mentioned, if you rely on that one single source, it puts you all at risk financially. And obviously, as Isabella mentioned, pipelines are really devastating for the communities that they're put through. And also, I think you should think of the source of this natural gas. Much of it is acquired through hydraulic fracturing, which is devastating for the communities that actually surround these gas wells, and frankly, often fall on the backs of Black and brown people and other low-income people. So the fact that you're relying on one pipeline is obviously concerning. You mentioned a 19% increase in natural gas prices. That seems like a reason not to put yourself, in the opportunity to buy more of it. Let's see. I think that the price was $6.25, which I think I was here for the community advisory panel meeting a couple weeks ago, and I think Mike Bolin mentioned that was like doubled or tripled what y'all had seen previously. So again, it doesn't seem to make sense to me that you'd want to buy more of it. Another thing I'm concerned about, just about from a public, power and transparency perspective, of any time a board, public utility like this delegates authority to staff, it's concerning to me. We just saw it last week with the TVA board delegating its authority to Jeff Lyash to make decisions about pipelines and gas infrastructure that will impact, all of us for future generations. And then there was a comment about the solar. First of all, I applaud you all for what you've done in the 502 megawatts through the flexibility provision and Green Invest with TVA. But frankly, we need to do more. And by putting yourself on the hook for more natural gas, we should be moving in the opposite direction, and we need to be really at 100% clean by 2035. So, frankly, by investing in more gas, I think you're putting yourself kind of behind the curve here. And I'm concerned about 20 years from now as well, because if we don't invest in these clean, energy sources now, 20 years from now, we're going to be past the point of no return. I think you all are probably aware of that. And one last thing, as far as realistic and cost-effective, I hope you all know this, but at this point, solar is the cheapest form of power there is per kilowatt hour. So it is cost-effective now. It's available now. And I realize this gas is actually I know you don't actually generate power from gas, it's just for heating, but you should be encouraging folks to electrify and use electric heat pumps. So I think I'm about out of time, but that's all I have now, and I'll encourage you to vote no on this. Thanks.
Thank you. Hearing no more discussion. Yes. Oh, we do? Oh, Mr. Minot? Mr. Minot, state your name and you have 5 minutes, please.
Yeah, I'm Kent Minot, I don't want to repeat what Brady said because he really touched on a number of important points. And excuse me, I'm straight from the dentist chair, so I'm going to talk funny.
I'm sorry.
This is really a wrong move. And I think Brady has detailed some of the specific reasons why, but I hope you know that I've really enjoyed the welcome that you've all given. It's rough to be an environmental advocate these days because the environment keeps on getting worse. And many of the things, as Brady's pointed out, many of the things that we've advocated for, we've gotten a sympathetic response from you folks. You've done it, and it's been great. And Brady mentioned the solar and all. That's terrific. But I think the key thing I want to say to you is that this good thing or that good thing or the other good thing isn't enough. We're in the weeds right now. In British Columbia, 2 weeks of rain just fell on that state within 2 days and caused devastating damage. Mountains have fallen off into valleys below. We're in it now. And it kind of disturbs me to hear comment from the board saying, well, we're just not ready with those green technologies, but we're hoping that they'll come along. Folks, they're ready now. Solar and storage can be implemented now. And so I implore you to study up on this because there are numerous studies that tell you that we can do it. One of the things you should study is the condition that people are experiencing in the Permian Basin in Texas, which right now is an environmental horror show. the amount of released methane when photographed from airplanes with infrared photography is a black cloud. It is a climate catastrophe. And to continue to support this industry is morally wrong and is damaging the future for our children and grandchildren. Don't do it. And the key thing I implore you to do is make a plan, a comprehensive plan for dealing with the climate crisis, because it's on us right now. And we cannot afford to deploy any more natural gas. The first meeting I came to here, Mike Bolin gave a report about the pipeline that blew, and they were in danger of not having any gas for that winter. Now things turned out okay, everybody forgot about it, but I didn't. And I think that it's important to have a plan, step by step, a harmonious transition, get off gas, really. It's killing us. And all the good things that you have done won't mean a thing if we continue to exploit natural gas in our country the way we are now. Be part of the change. Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you, sir, as always. Is anyone else signed up? Okay. So, Mr. Coley, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Askew.
Aye.
Commissioner Caballero. Commissioner Hamilton.
Aye.
Commissioner Herbert.
Aye.
Commissioner Simpson Brown.
Aye.
Commissioner Small.
Aye.
Commissioner Worden.
Aye.
Resolution 1447 is passed.
All right, we'll move on to Resolution 1448. Mr. Bowles?
Yeah, you got me. So Commissioners, last month you asked that staff and myself look at ways to use the TVA pandemic credit to help with customer assistance. Resolution 1448 will address that. You'll see the resolution here in a second. Go ahead, Sherry. And after we consulted with our counseling staff that work for Tiffany and our partners in the community we work with on these assistance programs, we are going to direct $1 million of this credit to our to the weatherization fund. The other $5 million will go towards customer assistance. As you heard, the bills this winter are going to be higher than they were last year, and so we think that'll be necessary to have the $5 million to help those folks out when the bills come. As you remember, last month you did approve $1.3 million to allow us to pay off the debts, and that is being done as we speak. Tiffany's folks are taking care of that right now. And so overall, the $7.3 million will be used for these programs as directed by you all last month. And so I recommend 1448 be approved on the first reading. It does require 2 readings, so we'll come back if approved next month to make it official. And so I will gladly take any questions you may have from us about that.
Questions or comments?
Not a question, but a comment. I just wanted to say that when we talked about this last month, my concern about not putting anything back through our adjustment account to lower the overall rates is that there are going to be some folks that need help that will never call us, and we know that. We hear that. And we struggle to understand why they don't call us. I think sometimes it is because they don't know, regardless of how often we try to get the word out and how many avenues we need. But I think other times it's because they're intimidated with the process, or because they just don't want to admit that they need help, and they will continue to struggle and do everything they can. So I'm going to support this, but I'm also going to urge anybody that's listening to this, if you know somebody that needs help, don't assume that they're going to reach out to us. Do what you can to help them get in touch with us and to make sure that they take advantage of this, because I think everybody sitting here, we all want to help those folks that need it most, and we're continuing to struggle on how to do that. We can't do it by ourselves. Tiffany's folks can't do it by themselves. So for anybody that thinks that this is a good thing, we need your help, both to get the word out and to help somebody that you may know that may not reach out to us.
Kathy, I agree, and I'm going to add another group of people who I saw, you know, this is not a scientific study, but many of the people I talked to, small number, 6, 7, 8 8 people, 37915 area code, 37912 area code, because if you think about Lonsdale, 912, which is Norwood, backs up to that, has about, I think, a 30% folks of color in those communities. People I talked to said, listen, Tavi, I will do what I need to do to get my bills paid. So 2 in particular, who were both single moms, said, I'll never show up on a KUB, on a KUB list of somebody who is about to either pass due or electricity is going to be turned off. So we talked about it, and the thing that I walked away with was, one of them said, y'all just did nothing for me, right? And these are both single moms. These are both in the 912 area code. Folks in 915, 6 have never had past due bills, right? But they said, I could use support. 2 of them did say, hey, this would help me because, I have fallen behind. And so as I think about those 2 people in 912 who are single moms, those people in 9156 who said, I've never had anything, I've never been past due, I think that in our zealousness to help people, we forgot to help people. And so I'm going to support this too, but I do think that we have to be more cognizant of those people who say, one person, if I got to drive Uber, I'm going to make it happen, right? But that's less time with my son. That's less time that I get to do the things I need to do as a parent. So I do think that having some opportunity to flow back would have helped those people. Now, granted, it would have helped everybody, but I'm thinking about those people in particular who said, however we do this $5 million, it's how do we figure out a way to get those people who say, I'm just going to make it happen. And so I do think that we have to make sure that when we talk about supporting communities and we talk about supporting Black and brown communities, that we go into those communities and talk to those people. These are the people who I worship with. 2 of the people are people who I work with their children in an organization. And so I do think that we got to be careful about making sure that we support all of our communities, and they are not all monolithic and will come up and show up in the same way. And so Kathy, like you, I will support this, but again, moving forward, that gave me a lesson as a commissioner and someone on this board in terms of making sure that we do what we need to do to help all parts of our community, regardless of who may be in front of us saying this is the right thing or this is the wrong thing. And that's what I'm taking away from this. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
I have a question, and I understand what you're saying, Tide and Kathy, because I think those are excellent points. How are we going to kind of keep score on how this money is being utilized? If we come here in 4 months and a part of this has not even ever been tapped, do we have the flexibility to change course, just like, we've suggested might end up needing to happen?
Tiffany can answer the first question about how it gets spent.
So obviously, we are starting to already work on plans for how we would distribute the $5 million. And Commissioner Small, your point is definitely valid. And so we've had a lot of conversations. A lot of times our other assistance has been someone that has a past due balance. So our goal is to offer this to just someone that's saying, I'm struggling to pay a bill. They may have not gotten to that past due balance state yet. So we're trying to incorporate that as we are thinking about a program. But it will still require them to reach out to us and apply. And so I think, we have to take that in consideration. Those folks that are going to do what it has to be done to make sure things get done are also very busy people because they are working 2 jobs. And so that application, we're going to try to make it as simple as possible. But there are going to be some people that still don't apply. But our goal is to get the word out, and it doesn't matter if you're past due or not. This is there to help individuals that are struggling to pay their bills. So that is our intent, to help folks that don't have a past due and that do. Whomever needs the help, the goal is to create a program that would do that. So as we're in our talks, that's what we're trying to do.
Thank you, that was helpful, Tiffany.
And
The second part.
Yeah, but I do think the assistance, given what we just talked about with the gas prices and the electric prices, maybe there's a good number of folks that previously have not requested assistance, but may now find themselves, I'm really stretched, so I do need to apply for assistance. And I think that's part of our customer awareness, really trying to reach out to all folks. With respect to maybe the technical question of, could we go back if we found that the funds weren't being used? Well, I suppose the answer is yes. If we chose to do that, we would have to, I suppose, amend the PPA again in order to correct that, and that would require 2 readings. I do think that even though there may be some time lags, because we're not going to be getting this money, as far as from TVA, the funds become available. It starts with our October invoice, which I believe is paid, so essentially you get the credit in early December. So it's going to run all the way through next November. So I do think that that this assistance will be used for the purpose by which we have allocated it today. It may not all occur, and it really can't occur in the next 3 months because we don't have the funds available ourselves, so it will be stretched over a 12-month period at least, or something close to that.
Can we, as a board, get some sort of a report card or put as
Yep.
an agenda item?
Yep. Update you on.
Every board meeting, so that we can kind of keep track of this, and so if we feel like, hey, we do need to change course, then we would have the ability to do that. Because I just feel like that this money is sort of just floating out here, and if the people, just like Tybee said, are hardworking, nose to the grindstone, I'm not going to be late, I'm not going to have late charges, we don't want to penalize those people. But at the same time, with things increasing due to nobody's fault, I mean, we can't help it if the weather's going to be colder this winter. I just think we need to stay on top of this as a board and know what's happening and what assets are being used and which ones aren't.
I'll ask Tiffany that we provide that to you all, so yes, we can do that.
So a couple of things. I think the report is really important. I think for us to be looking at that on a monthly basis is a really great suggestion. Second, from a nonprofit background and experience, I think it's really important that when we do see maybe not as much movement as we want to in these funds being used, asking ourselves questions of how we're getting the word out, because oftentimes I think, and I see this many times in federal programs or state programs, like, well, it's just not working, people don't need it. And then we go in as community organizations and we realize that there are other barriers in place that don't allow. So before going back and saying, well, this money's not being used, no one needs it, making sure we're figuring out the best ways to get those folks aware of what's happening. And I know that there's a lot of work that's already been done, and it's not to take away from that, but I do think asking ourselves the question of, is there a different way of reaching people? And I think the third thing I'd like to ask, and I don't know if we have this information at hand, is what percentage of KUB's client base is not low income? So do we have that number?
So we don't track that information, obviously, in our system. We could tell you how many folks have applied for low-income assistance, the programs that we know are income-based, but we don't really know those that haven't applied.
And the only reason I ask that is because in the last board meeting, this was my concern, is how many people in our population do not, by federal numbers, do not need this support, and how are we helping those who really do? And so for me, it would be really interesting to know, we might not track that as an organization, but we have that information available from the census and saying, well, if 75% of the people that we serve don't need that support, I'm making up that number, I don't know the number, how are we best serving that 25% that does fit in that category, regardless of them requesting help or not, right? So I just want to bring that up again, because I do think, for me, I'm very concerned about making sure that we are serving those who need it, and those who won't need it are possibly just not needing it. What am I trying to say? So those who need it the most, that's who we're serving in terms of these funds, especially because they are relief funds. So yeah, I look forward to reports, and if there's anything we can do involving organizations in the community to help that, we'd be interested in supporting that.
I appreciate that. Go ahead.
I would suggest, as far as the timing of the reports, we need to link this up as far as when the funds are becoming available, so it might be midwinter or something before we would provide that first report, maybe March or so, something such as that. It gets time for the program to get up, or the funds to be distributed, get up and going, and of course, we're only going to be probably releasing around 500,000 or so, per month as we get it from TVA.
I want to underscore what Commissioner Caballero said, is that if there are opportunities for us to help connect you all to the organizations, to however we need to get the word out, certainly use us as resources and members of the board. So if we need to go out to, I don't know, MPHC or, churches, wherever it might be, let us know how we can get you connected to the right people, because like she said, is that it's imperative that we get this out to the people who absolutely need it, so.
I think what might be helpful, thank you, are you done? I'm sorry.
And I was gonna say, and if we, language, if we need to translate, anything like that, I think is gonna be helpful.
And to add on to that, I think it might be really interesting in our next board meeting to maybe have a presentation of what the application process looks like, so that we can also be familiar with it as we bring it
Talk
up
to
to the
people about
community.
it.
We are working through trying to develop that now, as well as we are planning to have an agency meeting. So that's something that we've done in our past, those agencies that we work closely with, and even new agencies that we're made
Okay.
aware of, to make them aware of what we're trying to do, what we plan to do. So I suspect we'll have a December meeting just to talk about bills and what's going to happen, and then as the program gets off and running, then a January or February meeting to talk about this is how folks can apply and how you can help your client base access the funds.
I think involving the church coalitions in those meetings, if they aren't already included, I think would be really, really important.
Yeah, because there are some people who are really, who may not be a nonprofit, but have deep ties into the community. So, those organizations that, and we can help you certainly identify some of those. But I think that's going to be helpful.
I found it instructive at our last meeting for you to tell us how much money is available. We don't have to wait until the new money is out. I would like for us to always know, because we've got a lot of money sitting out there that's been unexpended up to this point. So keeping us regularly informed about how much is available, regardless of whether it's this tranche or previous tranches. And because it could very well be that we need to allocate more money. It's not just a matter of not having, if we've got demand, we may need to allocate more money. So I'm not assuming that we're not gonna always have the demand. I don't know what the demand will be if we continue to try to improve our ability to communicate with folks who might need it. So the reports you've given us before have been helpful, and I hope you'll continue to do that.
We can definitely do that.
Okay, any other conversation? All right, I'll entertain a motion on Resolution 1448 on first reading.
So,
Commissioner Worden moves.
second.
Commissioner Small seconds. Mr. Coley, we have one person, Ms. Nicely, would you like to speak to the resolution?
Yeah, that'd be great, thank you.
Hi. Can you state your name and where you live?
Sure. My name is Bree Nisley. I live at 5316 Temple Drive here in Knoxville. Know some of y'all. Thanks for having me, especially KUB staff. I work as the Tennessee campaign manager for a group called Appalachian Voices. We've been working throughout the region for over 20 years, and I'm at our office here in Knoxville. I'm also on the steering committee for the Knoxville Water and Energy for All Coalition, which you all, I think, are familiar with at this point. We have a mission that's been endorsed by dozens of faith, labor, environmental, and social justice organizations throughout our community. First, I just want to thank the KUB board for your public service by serving on this board. And I also want to thank you for your decision to apply the $1.3 million from the TVA Pandemic Relief Credit to forgive utility bill debt for customers who are currently on payment plans. I speak from personal experience when I say I know that bill relief is going to make a huge difference for families throughout the KUB service area. The Knoxville Water and Energy for All Coalition is also really pleased to see the recent resolution that would dedicate an additional $5 million to utility bill assistance and $1 million to weatherization programs from the remainder of that pandemic relief credit. I totally agree. There are going to be folks who put their nose to the grindstone, don't want to ask for assistance, want to make sure their bills stay paid. But I also think that spreading that credit out over everyone's bill for $1.40 every month was not going to make a huge impact. And I think that this is the way to go to have a big impact. To that point, we have been working with KUB through data that KUB staff was sharing with us over a number of months to track disconnections throughout our communities. And we found that last year, between October through February, 3,000 households in the KUB service area were disconnected. We also looked at that by census tract to better understand how disconnections were impacting different demographics in different neighborhoods in our community. And we found that during that same span of time, the Chilhowie neighborhood had the highest disconnection rate. It was in the census tract with a 6.8% disconnection rate. So that meant the Chilhowie neighborhood saw 1 in 15 homes disconnected from their power during that time span. And that's the kind of research we were doing with KUB while KUB was sharing data with us. I think we said last time that we would love for you all to continue to share data with us so we can continue to do that really important research so you all have a better understanding of who is being impacted by disconnections. And to the monthly reporting piece that y'all brought up, I would encourage you all to ask for a monthly disconnection report in addition to, that looks at census tract data in addition to the things you all have already named. So anyhow, speaking in favor of this resolution that's been lifted up, also, I think Tiffany and other folks at KUB worked really hard last year to make sure the COVID utility relief effort, the CURE program, eliminated red tape for people to access utility bill assistance. We think y'all should do that again, and clearly that's a priority for many of you on the board. And so the other thing I want to talk about right now is, while you all have mentioned that it's going to take a while to roll out this funding, KUB regularly implements a utility bill moratorium on disconnections during the winter and holiday months. I think last year that started on December 10th. How long did that go for, Tiffany? Do you know? Through the end of the year. Yeah, so it started last year on December 10th through the end of the year. We would recommend that KUB implement a moratorium on disconnections immediately and extend that out past the end of the year because, these are the holiday months. It's going to be getting colder. It's really important that folks not be disconnected from their utility bills right now, and that would allow for some time to figure out a good outreach strategy on this utility bill assistance program. So I think that's all I really had to say. I had some things written down about winter fuel costs, but KUB offered a nice winter fuel report here at the beginning of the meeting, so I don't need to go over all that. I would just recommend if you all ever want to sort of track what the national outlook for different fuel cost increases is, you can go to the U.S. Energy Information Administration. They have a short-term energy outlook report that they do. So thank you all.
Thank you so much, Ms. Nicely. All right, any more discussion? Mr. Coley, would you call the roll?
I was going to look at the end, but my comment is actually recommended to the outreach I was talking about. I don't know if it's okay if I comment now rather than the end.
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
I have some handouts as well.
I'm going to set the table here if you can pass them out.
Thank you. All right, so yeah, I'm Brady Watson. I live at 229 Haywood Avenue. I'm also on the steering committee of Knoxville Water and Energy for All with Bree. And some of you may know I work at the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy. I'm our civic engagement coordinator. But first of all, I would definitely like to applaud you all for taking this action to distribute the remainder of the pandemic relief credit. I think it's a really great idea. It's going to really help people that are struggling the most. So thanks for doing that. And as I mentioned, I'm with KWEA, a member of the Knoxville community, and I too have personally struggled to pay my utility bills from time to time, so I know how that feels. And I've also been involved with some other efforts in the Knoxville area over the past year or so We've actually been canvassing folks that are facing eviction, and obviously a lot of those folks are, struggle with their utility bills in addition to their rent. So it's been pretty enlightening and frankly sad in many cases, because many of those folks know all too well what that pink slip on their door means. Some people have, I've talked to have lost loved ones and struggled to pay their bills on a single income. Some young folks moving out on their own for the first time and kind of finding their way in the world and learning the hard way. And even one woman who was forced to ask her longtime husband to leave their home after his continued challenges with substance abuse, and her challenge to pay the bills without him. And probably the most gut-wrenching of all was one woman who actually had to give up her child because she couldn't afford the bills. So while the stories are often different, there was one thread that seemed common throughout. Folks either didn't know about the assistance that was available or were confused about the application process. So I thank you, Board Member Caballero, for mentioning that application, because I think that's really important to understand, because it can be complicated for folks. But while you're living paycheck to paycheck and unsure how you're going to put food on the table or pay medicine, you don't necessarily have a ton of time to think about, how you're going to apply or even what's available or, what assistance might be available. So I think we can all agree that more needs to be done as far as outreach. So Dr. Askew at the last meeting asked us to help get the word out about the millions of dollars that KUB customers do have available to assist with their bills. And we'd like to request by sharing some thoughts on how that might work with KUB. So as mentioned before, I think outreach efforts should be targeted in census tracts with the highest rates of disconnections. Obviously, that would be some data that you would need to have in order to make that happen. So disconnections, past due bill accounts, and then system-wide to reach eligible customers wherever they live. As Board Member Caballero, mentioned, I think it's also helpful to have that information: who actually needs this assistance, who is low income, who doesn't need it, because that could better target your outreach. As has also been mentioned, Knoxville has an abundance of public entities, churches, NGOs, government agencies that can assist in getting information out to the community. And in those handouts I mentioned, handed out, I've included many of these. In fact, there are several groups doing awesome outreach in the community right now. And, I think the best way to reach these folks is actually meeting people where they are, at home and in their communities. So one example I have is Ms. Cynthia Finch with the New Direction Health Services, Healthcare Solutions. They've been doing outreach primarily in East Knoxville on vaccine and other COVID items. And I think you all know the good work that SEED is doing, socially equal, energy efficient development. They do a lot of canvassing and on-the-ground work as well. They just need more funding and resources to get it done. So once KUB identifies those primary contacts for those outreach organizations, something like a regular call or meeting could be scheduled to discuss outreach opportunities and ways to improve the work already being done. And you all could even form sort of a community outreach advisory group or committee of community leaders who live and work in those target communities. As Commissioner Small mentioned, some folks know those communities best, to better guide efforts and inform hard-to-reach customers about KUB programs and provide needed feedback on outreach efforts that are already underway. KUB could co-host educational events in communities with partner organizations that are in those communities already to give people more information about available assistance programs and how to apply. And of course, this would be a great way to tap into existing networks and reach more people. Other ideas are printing flyers at various locations in the community about the assistance available. And of course, while this will take funding to be successful, the more people connected with relief programs, the more revenue KUB gets back as you can collect those past due bills. So it's truly a win-win for everybody. And as a member of KWA,
Mr. Watson, your time is up.
Sure.
Quick question. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
this is helpful. Because I'm interested in church coalitions, that Creative Compassion Network, is that Compassion Coalition perhaps?
Could be. Those are just some examples.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Are we ready for a vote? Mr. Coley?
Commissioner Askew.
Aye.
Commissioner Caballero. Commissioner Hamilton. Commissioner Herbert. Commissioner Simpson Brown. Commissioner Small.
Aye.
Commissioner Worden.
Aye.
Resolution 1448 has passed on first reading.
Very good. Thank you all. Now it's time for our President's Report. Mr. Bolus.
Yes, Commissioners, as you know, we've been working for many years on resiliency of our water plant, MBW, and that program began many years ago, and we're in the throes of it as we speak. I'd like to introduce to you Joey Henry of our Water Systems Engineering Group to give you an update on the projects we're doing to ensure safe and reliable water for our customers for years to come. Joey.
Thank you, Gabe. Excited to be here to share an update on our water supply master plan with you today. The master plan initiative began a little over 7 years ago in 2014 when we set out with the goal of improving the resiliency of our drinking water treatment infrastructure. Now, back in 2014, we looked at several options to accomplish that goal, and that included things, two main categories, constructing a second water treatment facility or investing in our existing facility, the Mark B. Whitaker Water Treatment Plant. Now, ultimately, we selected to proceed with investing in the existing facility at MBW, and our initial plan had a series of capital investments aimed at eliminating single points of failure and providing redundancy to critical treatment components. So that included projects such as electrical upgrades, redundant piping for critical components of the treatment process, new filters, a second high-service pump station and clear well, and a dual intake project. Now, the dual intake project was a facility to be located at the forks of the river that would allow us to move water from the Holston or the French Broad River to MBW for treatment. So from 2016 to 2018, we constructed two of the initial projects, a high-service transmission main and an emergency generator facility. And throughout 2019, we advanced our filters project through design. And as we entered into 2020, and the full effects of the pandemic began to be felt from labor shortages, quarantines, supply chain concerns, and cost escalations within the construction market, we made the decision to pause that project, and we took the opportunity to form an evaluation team to take a fresh look at the water supply master plan and look for opportunities to evolve the plan given the pandemic impacts. So that team worked on an evaluation for the remainder of 2020 and into 2021, and we'll share some of the changes that we have in store for our plan with you today. So we formed a team of talented individuals to clarify goals and challenge assumptions, reduce our overall cost for the plan while balancing our risk, and manage the projected filters project cost escalations. We did this by focusing on options for our Phase 3 projects. Now, there's 3 categories of projects within the Phase 3 of the Water Supply Master Plan, and they included projects that address 3 categories. We'll start with source water resiliency, and that's referring to the treatability and reliability of our source water, the Tennessee River. Raw water distribution, which is the infrastructure that is needed to move source water from the river to the treatment processes, and high service pumping and clear well storage, which is the infrastructure that it takes for us to move our finished water from MBW to the customers through our distribution system. So we've made some changes to our plan, and our revised plan still achieves our objectives, but it lets us stay within budget. We'll start with source water resiliency because it's the most significantly impacted category with these changes. We challenged some of our underlying assumptions regarding our source water, and we conducted a thorough engineering risk-based assessment of our source water in 2020. The results of that study gave us the confidence to move away from the dual intake project as the risk mitigation tool and opt to manage our limited source water risks through development of a source water protection program. I'll talk a little more about that program in a moment, but we'll talk about the 2 other categories first. Now, the dual intake project housed the component that provided resiliency to the raw water distribution network, which again is the infrastructure it takes for us to move our source water from the river to the treatment trains. So in order to maintain the same level of resiliency with our revised plan, we have planned to construct a second intake and pump station to be located at our Riverside Drive facility, which is adjacent to the existing MBW property. In addition, we evaluated our high-service pumping and clear well storage project, and we've revised the capacity of the pump station in order to still meet our objectives with the plan, but build the facility as economically as possible. Now, as I mentioned, development and management of our source water risk through source water protection program is a cornerstone of our revised strategy. When we began looking at our options for managing and implementing source water resiliency, we recognize that there's a tremendous amount of effort within the industry right now regarding source water protection programs. And we recognize that we already do on a regular basis or have done many of the components that make up a good source water protection plan. For instance, we conducted a risk-based analysis of our source water in 2020. We comply with American Water Infrastructure Act of 2018 reporting requirements regarding source water risks. And we have emergency response plans in place for source water emergencies. So we plan to dedicate a team to strengthen and enhance a source water protection program through engaging in education, engaging regulators, regular emergency exercises, enhancing our emergency response procedures, and enhancing our annual sampling protocols so that we can monitor our source water. The revisions to our strategy allow us to offer us numerous benefits, but most significantly, it allows us to proceed with the filters project. Based on our market research, we anticipate that we could see up to a 30% increase in the cost of that project. This revised strategy does allow us to fund that project at the increased cost, and this is significant because this is currently MBW's most urgent need. Our existing filtration building is approaching 100 years old, and completion of this project is necessary for us to proceed with some needed structural and mechanical repairs in the existing facility. In addition, completion of this project provides tremendous resiliency to our water treatment infrastructure at MBW. Additionally, our revised strategy safeguards our core objectives of the master plan. We're still providing risk mitigation for our source water risk through development of our source water protection team, and we're maintaining the original dual treatment train concept from the initial plan, and we're providing resiliency to each component of the water treatment process. This plan also works within our current budget framework for fiscal years 23 through 32. Now, we will see an increase in spending for the next 3 fiscal years given the increase in the filters project cost. However, those increases are offset in the latter years of the plan by the savings generated from the changes we're making to those phase 3 components. So in closing, as we move into 2022, we have 2 main priorities. Priority number 1 is to bid our filters project. We plan to begin in January with contractor qualifications. We hope to open bids in spring, be in construction by summer, and we anticipate this to be a 3-year construction project. We're also looking at our options for applying for the federal infrastructure funding given the recent passing of the Infrastructure Act. Our second priority is to establish our source water protection team and charge that team with development and implementation of an enhanced source water protection program to safeguard our source water. Are there any questions?
All right, any questions from the board?
Very quickly, so Joey, thank you for a great presentation. I guess I understood the dual intake project, and I think I had just joined the board, and so I think it was Derwin who gave me the kind of big rundown of that, and I understood that. What were some of the underlying assumptions that were removed so that we are not doing the dual intake? And what is the dual intake project, and what's the difference between the dual intake project and then what you're doing at Riverside?
Sure, absolutely. So some of the underlying assumptions refer to what we learned when we studied our source water. So there are two main categories, if you will, of things that can affect the treatability of our source water. There's biological aspects such as algal blooms and bacteria, and there's also chemical spills such as chemical impacts from industry. So our study assessed the watershed upstream of MBW, and we also assessed how the river hydraulics work. So we learned that we have a limited number of sources of contamination upstream of MBW, most notably petroleum-based products at places like the Island Home Airport, for instance. Given the way the river works and the way that the river characteristics affect our intake, there's multiple layers of things that have to happen for a spill or a contamination event to affect MBW. Additionally, we also studied the biological portion of that and the dynamics of the river under TVA's current management strategy make that a biological event such as an algal bloom extremely unlikely and low probability.
And to answer your second part, so there'll be a dual intake closer to the plant.
Okay.
Two ways we can take water in at the plant, closer to the plant versus way upstream.
Okay, so
That's the best way to sum
on
it up.
the same side of the plant, the other riverside will be on the opposite side?
Be further, go ahead.
The second intake is on the same side of the river as our existing intake. The intention here is to maintain the dual train concept so that we can in all circumstances have the ability to get water from the river to the treatment processes. So adding that intake and pump station at Riverside Drive gives us the second path, if you will, to get water from the river up to the treatment process.
Okay, okay, that was my concern. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we're good.
Yes, sir.
And to follow up on that, is that because you might need to take one pump station offline for maintenance and therefore switch to the other?
That is part of it, yes. It will enable us to do more accelerated preventative maintenance. It also protects us against accidental dig-ins or pipe damage or just deterioration of pipes in general due to age.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
John, you had a question?
Well, yeah, it really kind of followed up Tidy's. So if there is a chemical spill or a tractor-trailer truck runs off the interstate ahead of our intake, if we still have the one intake, I know we've got an emergency response plan, but what I'm hearing you say is that the water moves at different, so the chemicals could come in and maybe stay on top water, and our intake is down below, and so it's the dual intake is not taken from the Holston, the French Broad. If the spill's in the Holston, we could take from the French Broad. That may not be necessary. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yes, that's what we're saying. What we're saying is there are several layers of the event that would have to happen in order for it to affect MBW. Density of the chemical, how it disperses through the water column. As you said, we do have the ability to take water from different levels within the river. So we're not saying that risk does not exist. We're saying it's very, very low probability due to the multiple levels of things that would have to happen for it to impact the intake.
I will add to that. I'll put on my Mr. Elmore hat for that. So being my inner channel, my inner Mr. Elmore. That river is large, very, very large. It moves very, very, doesn't sit still. And we have increased our capacity to take water at different levels. So we have a gate that says we can take it bottom, middle, top of the river. So if something's floating, we'll go to the bottom and take it. I mean, we have multiple things built into our plant naturally that we built over years that will allow us to have multiple options depending on what happens. And so I'm trying to, put it in simplest terms I can. We have a very good source of water. It's large. It moves a lot of water quickly by us. And so we feel our risk is extremely small, no matter what happens. So,
Basically, we just did a risk-benefit analysis. And, good.
Yes, sir.
Other questions? Let me just say, young man, I'm old, I can say that. Mr. Bolus told us we were going to be really impressed with you.
Oh, wow.
So we're glad you were here to do this presentation.
well, let me add to that, since you did that. Thank you, Chair Askew. So what I didn't tell you before was that Joey is managing our largest wastewater project in history, the BEHRC, which is about a month or two from being finished. Because of the old adage, no good deed goes unpunished, he's going to be assigned to the filters project at NBW to start that project next year. So he's got his plate full. And we got him gainfully employed for the next 3 years.
Well, we're grateful for your service. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome to the board meeting. Okay, was there an award? Did I miss that?
Yes, sir. Oh, thank you, Gabe. Yeah, it's my honor to announce to you guys that we are the first-time recipients of an acknowledgement from the Association of Metropolitan Water Agencies for a Sustainable Water Utility Management Award. This award recognizes water utilities for sustainable investment in protecting water resources and green initiatives. So we're very honored to be the first-time recipients of that award.
And in your package, you have actually the brochure that was made. We're one of 4 utilities in the country to get an award like this, so that's in your packets to look at for detail and a little bit behind what this award was about. So as always, we're humbled and really appreciative, but it also shows what we're doing to make sure we're making sure our plants are sustainable and our operations are such throughout, so they last for years and generations to come.
Only 4 in the United States. That's pretty impressive. Yes. So thank you and congratulations to the team. Anybody else sign up to speak? Okay. Following the adjournment of this meeting, the board will have a lunch session that is open for the public to observe. And if there's no other business, meeting is adjourned.